into a brand new wave, drowning out the noise that's tame. Liberty whispers through the brave, breaking free from every chain. Nullify the rules they crave, crypto beats that pave the way. Anarchy with minds that's safe, algorithms new dawn of day. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride. Beyond control we take a stand, casting off the iron brand. Freedom flowing through our hands, revolution's our command. Decentralize the way we plan, all together we expand. Breaking shackles for the clan, in this journey we're unplanned. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride.
Welcome everybody. It's a Saturday night edition, and we're going live with Freedom Uncut.
Hey,
And I don't know where
going on?
I don't know where Nick's at. Nick's hiding in the background. Hopefully he shows up. Nick, we'll bring you in here. How you doing today, Free?
I've got Nick in the trunk of my car. He'll be fine.
Is
I
he with no?
put holes in it. Yeah, he's fine.
Oh, okay. So at least he's breathing.
Yeah, but there's like half a
Thank you.
cup of water in there. He's fine.
Or a can of beer.
Thanks for having me on, guys. This is fun.
Hey,
Hey, no problem.
thank you for coming on, Free. So finally, I can say I did you a solid and brought you on our show.
I was telling you via text. I mean, this is my big break, so I'm trying not to screw it up. You know, I'm a longtime fan of the show, of both you and Andrew. You know, this is very exciting for me. So
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, it's a big push. Better not mess it up.
I know I got a lot riding on this, so that's why I put Nick in the trunk, because I figured it would go smoother if he started in the trunk, and then we'll move him on if he can behave.
And while Nick is in the trunk, we gave him a tablet too, so he can go over to our store and get himself a coffee cup. So, man, I still can't. I can't even find. I'm not even gonna look for it right now. But Nick, go to the. It's scrolling down at the bottom. Get yourself a coffee cup. So
Etsy.com/shop/the legacy right.
So, or it's actually, and you got Lysander Spooner right here. So, and speaking of Spooner, what the hell is going on with our country?
You should have made a spoon. I really feel like that was a missed opportunity for some good merch. It should be a Lysander Spooner spoon.
But
Maybe
it's a
you could
spoon.
do like a
Yeah.
whole set, with like a ladle with it, some sort of scoop, maybe. You know, basically distribution devices that are concave, really, like that. Just an opportunity, you know.
It
I mean,
could
everyone
be,
needs a
but
gimmick.
Everybody does. So what's I don't know. Should it go theme there, Andrew? One, we got the ladle. The gigantic ladle can be Lysander Spooner, and then we'll just go on down the line.
Yep.
I mean,
I like it.
let's just see how the
Let's
sales
do it.
go. We'll move it one step at a time.
You could do Karl Marx markers, maybe. I mean, that's off brand, but I mean,
I like it.
yeah.
Well, the crayons
I
were
like that.
were used up. He ate a lot of them, so
Yeah. Really, you could do it crayons for any of the Keynesians. Just give them their own crayon color, maybe.
yeah.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I don't want the children to eat the markers.
Did I
Seems
miss
like
the
that
opportunity
might
to
happen.
introduce myself? Should I introduce myself? For
If you want to introduce, yeah. If you
for
want to
those that
introduce
don't know
yourself,
me. So everybody calls me Free. I'm the host of the game show called Are You Smarter Than a Politician, which is on streaming on Fridays, YouTube, X, Rumble, Fridays 8 p.m. Eastern. And basically, it's a satirical game show that we teach concepts about regaining our freedom through an entertainment and comedy format. And the twist is that the chat controls the score. And so that leads to all sorts of chaos and hilarity. So it's a good time. We teach cool things, but we also have a lot of fun, and a few beverages may be drank during the process of that. And the exciting thing is Zach is going to be on yet again on this Friday, along with Aaron Day and Joel Valenzuela. And we're going to be doing a lot about crypto, which I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. So this is really like, I give you guys all the credit in the world for tying all these themes together so seamlessly. But we've had Spike Cohen on, Chase Oliver, Scott Horton, Larry Sharp, Stephen Nikela. We've had some pretty big names on. And then I do all this with the lovely Terry Batts, who's our producer and my friend. And then a bunch of my really funny friends come on, like Zach. And we've got Andrew booked. We just haven't had him on yet. And then I do freedomsuperstore.com, which you can get shirts like this. I do not have any distribution utensils per se, but I do have shirts and mugs. I guess you could scoop stuff up with the mugs if you were really that's what you needed to do. But and then basically what I'm interested in is empowering local communities through localism and decentralization. And I'm in DeFi. I'm into criminal justice reform, especially advocacy for our political prisoners like Dexter Taylor, Ian Freeman, Roger Ver, Roman Storm, people that I know you guys are very committed to also getting out of or freed. I'm into free speech, and I'm a big anti-war advocate, and I'm against bombing children and families and all of that for profit. So that's me in a nutshell.
And speaking of free speech, and that really is, that's what your whole platform is really all about, is to expand on free speech. So the best concept of how to combat against anti-free speech and red flag and bombing children, it's the blockchain, DeFi, and the blockchain tech, smart contracts, because in my opinion, that's a general way of expressing that free speech while simultaneously having an alternative to break away from certain systems that are bombing children and going all over the place, putting troops all over the place. I mean, bringing our troops home to depression and psychological issues and high rates of suicide and no help. So,
unfortunately,
100%. And spending. I saw an estimate the other day that we spent over $20 trillion since the end of the Cold War on this stuff. And that doesn't even include the cost going forward of, taking care of these brave vets that went off and fought these things, whether they were necessary or not. And, the health issues that come with that and the mental health issues that come with that. And, so we're still going to be paying for years and years to come. And, as Lars Mapstead said, we were talking about Lars before we came on. As Lars Mapstead says, the best thing you can do for a veteran is not make more veterans, right? So
exactly.
That makes sense.
Yep.
So what do you think about how do you think we play this all out and find the solution to break through all this overreach?
Yeah, well, first you got to identify the problem, right? So, why centralized power is a problem is because it puts too much power in too few hands, which leads to this overreach and control and takes away from our personal freedom. And these federal agencies are completely out of control. They make, thousands of new rules every year. Most of them are from unelected bureaucrats. So there's not even a single vote from Congress on these new rules. The $37 trillion in national debt is just a complete disaster and unsustainable. And it's just going to lead to, more problems for the working class, which, I feel like the working class unfairly gets burdened by this because they don't have, hundreds of thousands of dollars in investments and in the bank and a rainy day fund and all these things. So when you tax them, that's coming out of their paycheck and that's taking food off of their table, and then, we've got the corporatocracy that, because of the central control where, these big corporations are benefiting from, bailouts and subsidies while the working man and small businesses and entrepreneurs get just absolutely killed by these federal policies and the red tape and everything that's going on. Oh, we have an order for a spoon there. Excellent. See what I did there? I'm driving profit. I've only literally been on for 11 minutes. I'm driving profit. So
already driving profit.
Yeah. And then, all of these systems they put in place have just failed us, right? Federal education is just an absolute joke. I have lights in my house. I have lights everywhere.
You have lights.
Yeah, I paid my electric bill.
It's technology, baby.
So, the education system's a disaster. The schools are getting worse. The outcomes for students are getting worse. Centralized healthcare is a disaster. Obamacare is a disaster. We waste trillions of dollars on these unsustainable health systems that, make healthcare worse. And then, we're building up this federal surveillance state where we're spying on people. We're the communications are going through. We're intercepting over 80% of worldwide communications and spying on them. We're censoring both people and, religious groups. And, it's just completely out of control. And then communities have lost the right to govern themselves. Basically states have become welfare recipients to the federal government where they're begging for our money back to our states and our local communities. They always come with strings attached and mandates. And so even if you get the money back, you're agreeing to stuff you wouldn't have agreed to in the first place. And, it all erodes what's going on with, voluntary cooperation and innovation and personal responsibility. So people, feel no responsibility for, making a better life for themselves and their families and are waiting for handouts from the government. So, this whole thing is just an absolute disaster.
And right there, just like Terry said, follow free if you haven't already. So hello Terry. So speaking of Terry.
Hi Terry.
So the face and the brain, the face is free, the brain's behind the game show. But yeah, that's the issue. Is the question of subsidy. And how do we break away from just a sheer attachment towards this junkie machine effectively? We're addicted to this fake money and we have to keep on feeding the machine. And just creating more clones of different drugs effectively. How do we even manage to do that? Blockchain is an alternative, but say we didn't live in a world where we didn't have blockchain yet, how would we be able to do it?
Well, the key is decentralization, right? And I think decentralization is kind of a messy term, and but it's not a radical term. It's just common sense. It's how we take our
Mhm.
freedom back, right? We want to shift the power back to individuals, to families, to local communities, to faith-based communities. We want to rely on voluntary action, mutual aid, entrepreneurship, innovation. This country was made great by people coming up with things on their own, innovating, building businesses. It wasn't because of centralization that made this country great. And, so we want to restore, self-governance, economic freedom, and community resilience, and not
Mhm.
rely on the federal government, which is doing a terrible job.
Andrew, you had something to say?
Well, I was just going to say earlier, basically they're middle managers, right? They he was talking about how they're spying on us, and they're just anything and everything that they can do to maintain their position of power and control. Uh, they're gonna appeal to that, and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are an exception to the system, like with computer software. When there's an exception, the whole
Mhm.
program crashes. And then we're in a divergent situation. That's why you see the government spending more money and becoming more and more outrageous in the way they behave and things they think they can get away with, because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, we're in a capitulating state. They're totally at a point they're going to give up very soon, I believe.
So what you're saying is
It's
blockchain
it's
is
accelerating the
a
problem.
well, yeah, it's accelerating the problem. At the same time, it's also crashing it down. And another thing that you could also say is going towards the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, but blockchain technology would be uh, a way of utilizing the Ninth Amendment that we all forget is even there, and the 10th Amendment, which is nullifying.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. How do we yeah, actually that I'll bring that question up for you guys. How do we get people's train of thought back into what they're missing? How do we utilize, say, the Ninth and the 10th Amendment as a means to balance out and bring back the remainder of the Bill of Rights and take a step forward in nullifying the federal government?
Yeah, I think the key is educating people about what matters the most. And the duopoly's done a great job of dividing people almost equally. So it's a power struggle separated by, a couple percentage points on federal elections. And people identify as a Republican or a Democrat, and they feel like ownership, like they're part of a team, when it's really,
Mm-hmm.
this corporate mechanism used to control them and steal from them, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
we need to educate people on, if you care about your life and you care about your family and you want to provide a better life to your kids and your grandkids and future generations, concentrate on what's important, and that's your local community, right? And so that's, the key for decentralization is to, put the power back in the hands of individuals, families, and communities. And when you empower the community, that's going to reflect, your local values, your local needs, your local culture, not these one size fits all federal mandates that are just pushed down from DC to all these, different
Mm.
communities that have different needs and different wants, right? And so and in your local community, you can actually have a say, right? You can go into someone's office and talk to them. You can, go to a meeting and speak. You have real say in your local community, where in DC, they don't care a bit about what we think about anything. And so,
Mm-hmm.
invest where your voice actually matters. And, to educate these people that decentralization will strengthen their communities, their neighborhoods, the groups that they belong to locally, and make them more resilient. So when there's economic downturns or natural disasters, like we're seeing with the flooding in Texas, or, you know, the hurricanes and what's happened in, you know, North Carolina, and, you know, all of these issues that come up, you know, whether they're, you know, caused by the government or caused by Mother Nature, we need our communities to be more resilient and adaptive and be able to react quickly and provide for local people, right? And, you know, when you educate people on these things, you're telling them that, you know, their rights matter and their personal responsibility is important, and you know what's best for your family, your business, your property, and DC does not. And so it's getting people excited about taking control over that again, you know, working together through voluntary cooperation, you know, instead of, you know, through these compulsory programs that are pushed down from DC through forced compliance and coercion.
You got something to say, Andrew?
Well, I'd just like to comment on that, and just kind of flesh out what I was talking about earlier. When we talk about the middle managers in the economy and the government structure, there's something called the Peter Principle, which means that you build towards a level of performance that you're not competent and able to maintain, and you revert back to gravity, back to the middle support. And you can kind of see that what I was talking about with the exception to the exception language I was talking about with computers earlier, and what's going on with the Bitcoin ecosystem right now, that crypto ecosystem right now. You see a lot of these big companies are creating stable coins, and that's really actually kind of shoring up the potential for the gravity of, you know, the control of the economy, and trying bringing people back into a more stabilized environment for them to do business in.
So what do you think of what Chris says? Small business and having small businesses encouraging crypto pay structures.
I mean, they've been talking about creating like Bitcoin style payment systems through just the regular regulations that we currently actively use now in businesses, and they've been doing that for over a decade. So I think there's definitely something in the works. Trying to use Bitcoin Core is not going to be a feasible mechanism because of the way that the software is developed. But more alternative currencies like Dash, Bitcoin Cash, Zcash, Monero, just anything and everything that actually works is going to be more effective and healthier for the economy and for the world in general, because there's not going to be, when they manipulate the money supply, that gives them the momentum they need to launch wars and attack and hurt people. And we're really trying to tie these things down now by doing what we're doing with crypto. And they're being forced to let go of the grip of power and pivot and make smart moves to maintain their position. But their position is going to deteriorate over time because of the way that they've mismanaged the economy around the world for the last 50 or so years, at least.
Well, let's stay on this within the digital apparatus and blockchain, but on a political structure, especially when it comes to electoral processes. What do you guys think on the concept of DAOs and smart contracts to be on the blockchain, to be a alternative replacement towards what we have now, especially with voting?
I'll go first if you guys want me to. So Washington D.C. is the middle manager, right? It's the middle manager of all middle managers, and that's what Ethereum was. It was the first instance of a DAO, right? It's a replacement middle manager, but it's for the entire internet, and people are contracting on that every day. It's not perfect, but no software is perfect when it's first released or even developed over a long period of time. That's why they have nightly and weekly builds and monthly and just complete release cycles. After so long something's going to come out to compete against Ethereum, and it's going to provide another option, and that's another way is that you return that to that form of gravity, is that you have more than one option for people to do contracts on, and there's not going to be as much pressure because the incestuous nature of the government's legal system is coming, it's unraveling from my perspective.
My head just exploded. Looking at Free, I think he's trying to gather his thought. You got anything to add, Free?
Well, I mean, it's obviously the way to go, but there's going to be an education component. You know, people need to be educated about it. They need to trust it, you know, and I think, you know, cryptocurrency is kind of the intro to blockchain, right? And, you know, we're starting to see some real traction in cryptocurrency. I believe the latest stat I saw is, you know, we're getting near, you know, 20% of all Americans own some sort of cryptocurrency. And so, you know, we're getting there, and the younger people are understanding it. And so I think we're well on our way, but I think, you know, we're actually moving backwards in voting, in my opinion, where, you know, people are advocating against even like mail-in ballots, right? You know, they're advocating for paper ballots, you know, 1-day voting, the national holiday for voting. So I think we're moving backwards in that respect. So I think it's going to take a lot of education to get people, you know, comfortable enough with, you know, the concept that you mentioned, the DAOs and the smart contracts and voting via the blockchain and you know, all of these concepts that, you know, we're championing, but, you know, people are not, you know, even the slightest bit familiar with.
Yeah.
Well,
we need to get to. Oh, go. I just let me just lay this one comment down. I think the best way to kind of ease people in is to share just how transparent blockchain can be and is. So, and then I'll go ahead, Andrew.
I was just saying a good way to understand how DAO works is that everyone knows Washington D.C. people bribe politicians, right? Because politicians, they're the ones that make that shake the hand and grease the wheels and make sure that business is done. Traditionally, historically, we've replaced those concepts with a decentralized. That's what it's called, a decentralized autonomous organization. Is that there's no human interaction in the same sense. It's by computer. So you get on Facebook, right? You have to connect to a Facebook server. I write a contract. I put it on the internet. I need somebody to do security for me for 20 minutes at this point while I'm, you know, doing whatever. I'll pay 5 Ethereum. That's a lot of money now, but it wasn't back then. But you're still doing it, and it's still cutting out the middleman, which is Washington D.C.
Realistically, it's a lot of money in terms of dollars now, but it's really just the same, which is a good thing because it holds its value while the dollar's plummeting. So where do we go from here then? Where do we go? I mean, how do we get this? How do we start educating the people? How do the I guess a good term. How do we educate the Luddites?
Well, people need to start getting paid in it. It doesn't matter how they're getting paid in it; just the fact that they're using it. That's a big push and momentum for the whole system. And once you're paid in it, you realize, oh man, I actually can't lose this because this isn't like it was before, where if I get screwed by the bank, they can just fix it. They're starting to smarten up to what they're dealing with. I think that's a very big push for this ecosystem.
I think the short answer is, you know, through localism, right? So because of centralization, we don't have control over most of our systems, but we still have control over our local systems to a point. And so if you can start using it locally in any way, you know, and think of local currencies, but the blockchain version of those, if you could start doing, you know, some sort of local currency or adopt a currency for local use. You know, and it's great that people are doing that today. You know, Pork Fest, which was just like a week ago, they had a thing where you could use Zano to make all of your payments at Pork Fest. So all their vendors were accepting it, and we need more things like that, you know, everywhere doing that. And so, you know, think like farmers markets or fairs or, you know, any sort of you know, sale type environment that's controlled locally, that we need to start doing that. And, you know, the problem is, you know, I was thinking about this. I have a son that's about to leave for college, and, you know, I was thinking, boy, it'd be great if we started doing it in the universities. So the young people, you know, got used to, you know, they're paying with their phone anyways. There's no reason they couldn't be doing it with, you know, their crypto wallet, as opposed to, you know, using their bank card via their pay mechanism on their phone, right? But when the government controls all the schools, they're not going to adopt something like that. And so that's the problem with centralization, is when you want to innovate, when you want to choose a better way, when you want to pull back power, they've already built in the mechanism in place to not allow you to do that. You know, why would the government push a localism effort when they don't want you to do that, right? So we got to think of innovative ways, and we need to do it soon before everything is controlled. You know, that we have, you know, some digital currency from the government level that's being pushed down, that, you know, runs the smaller projects, you know, out of business. And so that's why time is of the essence, and that's why I'm very thankful that shows like yours and other people are out there, you know, beating this drum and trying to wake people up to the fact that this needs to be done now, that we can't wait.
I mean, you make a good point. It's the flow of money that's the real struggle session. Is that if it's frozen, like they did with Bitcoin Core, then it's a lot easier for them to step in and take back control. But if there's more money flowing through different venues and avenues, then it's a lot harder for them to regulate, to tax, and to maintain their position of power.
100%. And, you know, the CBDCs are coming. It's just a matter of, you know, can we, you know, get strong enough with the, you know, decentralized currencies to ignore them and fight back.
Did you
Hi,
have
Nick.
fun?
And welcome, Nick. So,
What's up, Nick?
Hey, we're on the way home now, guys. I'm probably gonna hop off real quick, just letting you know I'm here, and I'll definitely lose reception. We live way out in the country, so I'll be back as soon as I get home.
All
See
right.
you guys.
well,
See you in a minute.
all right. We'll see you in a moment then. Good to see you.
Little teaser
It
of
was
what's coming soon.
Right.
What is coming soon, everybody?
Up next
What
on
is-
Legacy Right.
Nick. So, speaking of CBDCs, though, what's on the agenda at this point? I mean, is Bitcoin is that the startup for the CBDC? Is that where Bitcoin's heading? I mean, we already know it's been hijacked, but
Yeah, I was reading that BlackRock now owns the second most amount of Bitcoin, and so if you know, with them owning the second amount of Bitcoin and controlling the housing market, I mean, they could, you know, absolutely devastate our economy if they chose to. So, you know,
I mean, that's their point, is that they're trying to hold us hostage because they're used to holding us hostage.
yeah, so that's, you know, like I said, the local currencies are going to be key, and, you know, using you know, the independent projects that aren't based on Bitcoin are going to be so important. You know, they're you know, this has been going on since, you know, the 90s, I believe, where, you know, I think there's you know, close to 100 local currencies that have been used in different parts of the world to various degrees of success. And, obviously, we have the fiat fiasco of, the US dollar losing, 98% of the value since, the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. So, we've got these forces pushing in both directions against us. That's why these, independent projects are going to be so important.
Well, I mean, the dollar does have a shelf life like anything else, and I mean, this is something that's been talked about on the more technical side for a long time. I remember back in the '90s, there at least late '90s, early 2000, there was a project called Beans, and it basically predated Bitcoin, and it was obviously shut down because they're not going to let somebody step in. But this has been something that people have been pushing. There's a lot of different like cryptocurrency efforts that have predated Bitcoin Core as a network, generally speaking. But they're losing the battle. They're just trying to maintain the semblance of identity right now.
Speaking of identity and the Fed, how do we use? Is it a better alternative rather than just to scream out in the Fed? Is it better just to use what we have already with blockchain to divorce from the Fed and allow it to just destroy itself? Because it's inevitable. I mean, it's designed to destroy itself.
Yeah, I think what Andrew said was key. Getting money into crypto, hopefully from the payment source, and just getting this money out of the fiat system immediately, and then having people use that for payments and bartering and all of their transactions. There's many use cases of people that are completely out of fiat now and have been living out of fiat for years. So it's totally possible. We just need to get the masses doing it.
Andrew,
I mean,
you're just gonna look pretty.
Well, I like looking pretty. It helps with my baldness.
You're just gonna shine your baldness.
I mean, hey.
Go on. Go forth, bald head. Go forth, bald head.
Okay. See you later. Oh man. I mean, jeez.
I said go forth.
I feel like you owe me a royalty when you kick somebody off the show. I think I invented that.
I mean, I think you also invented this. Hold on.
What? Get in here.
The squirm cam. Yes, the squirm cam. For sure. You're picking up all my bad habits. I appreciate that.
I don't know if it's a thank you. Do I say thank you or you're welcome?
No,
thank you. It's Japanese for sorry.
Welcome you. Go ahead, Andrew.
I am a crypto tard. The way I figure it is when the Fed goes dark, I doubt Bitcoin is a currency of choice. Well, the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, openly said that there is room for alternative currencies in the market of the United States. So that's, I mean, I'm not trying to say that we should just jump for joy and the battle's over. The battle isn't over at all. It's just them trying to signal to people who think that, oh my God, we're winning, we can just relax and go away in the night. And that's something that we have to really be realistic about. Is that you don't just win in the moment. You win by continuously to push them out of the picture.
So let it burn. They're burning themselves. Anything to add, Free?
If you want to, go up a level, I think that, there's other concepts of decentralization that also play into this, right? And so a good example of that would be, establishing, community food independence, right? So, growing, distributing, and, selling food locally, reduces reliance on, the corporate food system and subsidized agriculture. And so if you can move into, that area and also tie that to, a local currency of some sort, now you're solving two problems and you're establishing it from the ground up as this is how we do our food and this is how we do the payments for it, and marry those concepts and teach it through that way, right? And so, one of the things that I'm very concerned with is our food security. And, we're not buying locally sourced food, which comes from, within like an hour of where you live if you're buying locally sourced food. And instead, when you're getting supermarket foods, you're getting foods that are coming from, 1,500 miles away on average, right? And so, by taking that over, by having the resilience of your own food systems, you could also tie that to, the payment and economic features of decentralization that we're talking about as well. And there's many examples of that.
It's all about relationship building, really. That's all it really is. It's just building relationships and staying local and more cohesive with all those around you, looking for friends close to home. So, speaking of Bitcoin and crypto, will it be available if there is no power? If everything just went completely dark,
Well,
could we be able to?
it is something to be concerned about, yes, but it's really highly improbable that it's going to actually occur. If that's the first thing that happens, people revert back, like I said, the Peter principle. They revert back to what they know. They revert back to silver and gold. They're not going to use the dollar because the dollar is not going to be worth anything what it was before. They need hard assets. They need bullets. They need, cigarettes. Just the general things that you would need around the people that you can trade with in order to maintain your position within the society that you occupy.
And
thanks, Andrew. You said the magic word.
Another part of that, though, is, a concept of decentralization is also, creating local energy co-op on, federally regulated energy, and builds that local resilience that I was talking about, right? And so, in a lot of rural areas, they're doing this where, I think like over half of the land mass of the United States now is run off of, rural energy co-ops. So, by establishing those, you don't have to worry as much about, the catastrophic grid failures that we've seen in Texas and California that show, how vulnerable we are to these centralized energy systems and the problems that come with them.
Well, a lot of the problem is they haven't been updated in years. Our entire power grid's running off of like 40 years ago, at least, if not even older than that.
Well, not even just the grids themselves, but the security of them. And, Elon finally talked about this when he was doing Doge, but, I've been talking about it for a while that, I've seen estimates that, over 80% of, government run networks are extremely susceptible to cybersecurity risks, like, hacking and where there could be, cyber terrorism through these networks, right? And so it's not even just that they don't update the grid, it's the security of the grid is also extremely vulnerable.
Another
Andrew?
thing to think, what I keep pulling back to this because it's kind of important. When I say middle manager, there's two components to middle. Well, there's three, but the two main components to middle management is fear and prestige, perfection. You have to straddle the line. It's a line of fixation between the two. Perfection takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to reach, and there's no compromise in reaching that perfection, other than lying and taking shortcuts. Fear, we need to have it done right now. Immediate gratification, appealing to time preference. It's not realistic. You have to make compromise. You have to realize that you're not going to solve every problem. In order to move as a society, that you have to let go of power, and that's the third. It's a prison society. That's what we live in. It's not overt. It's covert, but it's growing because they've had so long to do what they've done since World War II, at least.
The answer was Prison Planet. All you had to say was that. You get negative 100 points. Goodbye, Andrew.
Is Terry keeping score? I should ask.
Oh, Terry, are you keeping score? Where's Andrew at? Oh, I'm not going to do that to Terry.
All I care about is that I'm winning. That's my only concern, really.
Well, on our game show, nobody wins. We're all losers.
Except for the audience.
The audience wins.
Speaking of wrong answers, though, we talk about, another part of decentralization is education, obviously. And thank God people are finally tuned into that and talking about homeschooling and micro schools and important concepts in, education freedom. But one of the things that doesn't get talked about in that is the ability to control the curriculum. They really only talk about it in, DEI and gender studies type ways, right? But the important thing is we could be educating about cryptocurrency, blockchain, voting via the blockchain, things like that in schools, and getting people comfortable with these concepts when they're kids and they're coming up, and teaching concepts of decentralization and localism in the schools. So when they're voting adults, they understand the value of localism and local power over the ease or the perceived ease of central control by DC. And so we need to pull back education and, one, because we're not really educating the kids very well at all, but also it allows us to take over the curriculum and teach important concepts. Oh, Terry is keeping score.
Terry is keeping score, by the way. So I'm going to have a very low score for Friday. Yeah, that's actually, I had a question, but I'm going to have but I forgot about it. Andrew, you got anything to add?
Freedom really is, and I get into these concepts from called the Enneagram personality. This is a psychological framework, but from the perspective of the Enneagram personality, type 7 is the enthusiast. That is their bread and butter. It's always something. They need something new, something that's not boring, something to keep their attention to. They can avoid their problems. You see that a lot with people who have drug problems and stuff like that. But it's a fetish, right? And we was talking about the DEI. It's one thing after another. And how dare you, so that's none of your business. That's what that's coming from. So when we say freedom with responsibility, but from that perspective of that psychological part of the framework, there's no responsibility. It's just trying to avoid reality.
Why is that? Why have we lost the general principle of accountability and responsibility in our society today?
Well, because that's an expensive thing to maintain for some people, and they're not comfortable with having to be responsible. They want to just have their fun. because if they're having fun, they're ignoring their problems.
But wouldn't it be more expensive to go have fun, especially as the cost of living goes up and your dollar dwindles? And
I mean, yeah, that's true, but that's a part of inflation, right? So, Kilburn says no father figures, and that's right. There's nobody there to keep their foot down and keep them in line.
I think it also
So
goes back
family.
to education too, right? We're not educating people about personal responsibility. We're more educating them about how to game the system and, try to get handouts, whether it's full on welfare or loans and grants and concepts like that, right? So I think it really starts with education, where we educate people to be self-reliant and empowered, as opposed to just teaching them to, be a cog in the machine and hope for the best.
That is true, but we are living in a society today that's kind of stuck into this mindset that, well, I've worked all my life, I'm owed this, and we have Social Security just hovering above. So, in the society that we have today, if we're going to create a more decentralized solution, um, how do we kind of wean these people off of that fix of, say, Social Security or any other welfare entitlement program, while simultaneously crushing it at the same time? So that way they're not completely taken off balance.
I mean, I think the key is to tell them that the government lies to you. And, I think most intelligent, educated people don't even believe that Social Security will be around for, I'm a little older than you guys, but that it'll be around for my generation, let alone, my kids'
Mm,
generation. Right. And so, teaching them that, like I said, taking back over the education system and teaching them that, all of these centralized systems lie to you and fail, and, continuing to educate people about that. And, I saw the comment from Kilburn that, that everyone's going to grow up to be a TikTok star now. And
hmm
while I do think that that's a problem, I do at the same time think that um, we also are creating people that understand the power of independent media at the same time, which I think is another key piece to this, because,
hmm
just six corporations own almost all of the channels for mainstream media. And the government subsidizes it through entities like the NPR and
hmm
uh, by spending money on ads for elections and, all of these different mechanisms they use to control the media. So while we don't want people thinking that they're going to become millionaires because they're going to be a TikTok star, I do think it's very important to let them know that, you guys are a great example. You've been doing this show for a long time, and that you guys can get information out there and reach me. I'm a fan of it. And, all of your regular viewers, and educate people on these concepts that no one else is talking about. I mean, you guys talk about, things every episode that people aren't talking about, and have been doing it for a long time. And that's a very valuable thing that we need today.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. So Terry's laughing. I'm scared now. So, hey, you got anything to add on that, Andrew?
Well, like I was talking about before, it's it's all about the marketing, right? And certain people are more prone and more able to market than other people. Just the same way as some people are more able to manage finances and do business better than other people. It's 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 like I've said on the World Blockchain Roundtable, which you can catch us on Thursdays at 11 a.m. Uh,
What a
there are
plug.
there are different gears to different forms of government. Government is a management model, and it depends on where you're at. When in Rome, do as the Romans. That's basically it is, and we've got too much territory to effectively manage the entire world, let alone the entire United States. 50 states, and we're 36 trillion, $37 trillion in debt, right? And that's just on paper. If you do unfunded liabilities, it's way above that. And you have to realize at some point you had to let go of the grip of power, and you had to become, like you said, free. We had to be more local. We had to have a closer understanding to the situation. We need more context. We need less external influence, more regional, local influence.
Yeah, the unfunded liabilities, another thing. I'm glad you brought that up because no one's talking about that. The unfunded liabilities, I mean, I've seen estimates that, we're nearing $200 trillion in unfunded liabilities. And so, we're not talking about that when we're talking about the debt, right? And the figure I use is there's approximately 100 million taxpayers. And so if you have 100 million taxpayers, every time the government spends or borrows $1 trillion, that's $10,000 per taxpayer. So if you have two taxpayers that are married and live in the same home, each time the government spends or borrows $1 trillion, that's $20,000 to that family. So, they just raised the military budget to $1 trillion. Is a family really in need of $20,000 worth of defense every year for a country that's got allies on our north and our south and oceans on our east and our west? I mean, that just seems like $20,000 per family. That seems like that should be your lifetime spending on defense, if even that much, right? But, then you take that $200 trillion number. I mean, that's just absolute insanity of, what these families owe, right? And so, these are huge problems that people need to talk about. And that number that I use for that estimate is actually high because the amount of people that actually pay over $10,000 in taxes per year, that number is actually closer to like 65 million people that pay over $10,000 in taxes per year. So it's a very small part of our population that's paying these bills and is going to be responsible for this borrowing and these unfunded liabilities.
Well, I mean, look what they released with the Doge stuff, right? Elon Musk is talking about how we're paying newspapers for subscription models with taxpayer money. I mean, they're co-equal actors. They're dependent on each other to maintain their survival, their position, and their control. And so, I keep going back to this. We just need to take the hammer and break the system up and decentralize it. And I mean, I know that sounds easy to say, but we have to be so consistent about it so that people get the message and the right people get the message, not just all people. Because if you do it to all people, no one's gonna be able to reform anything. It has to be specific types of people. Elon Musk has got the psychology for that specific type of person.
I don't know if I trust him.
Just in general. I mean, Murray Rothbard has the same psychology as Elon Musk. It's just about the application of the psychology and trying to get the ball moving.
I think the dirty secret, though, is that, the right always wants to say that the left is socialist, and both the left and the right are socialist, right? And, the right wants to control the economy in a socialist way, and the left wants to control the people in a socialist way. So when they work together as the duopoly, they're controlling basically every aspect of our lives through socialism. And so it's about educating people, don't be afraid of socialism. Socialism's already here. We need to fight against socialism.
We never had
that's
real
what the
capitalism,
Yeah.
as Zach would put it.
Well, we have real capitalism. We need to get that term out of your brain. So, but no, it does. It sounds like. Thanks, man. I say what you got to say. They'll come back to me.
No, I was just saying, like, we need markets. We need people to understand that what they're being sold a bill of bad goods, right? It's bad bread on the shelves. It's decayed. It's just something that's not true. They have to realize that there got to be alternatives, and the things that keeps being shoved in their face, like Bitcoin Core, Bitcoin Cash, that's not perfect, but it's a start. And they had to realize, okay, maybe I should advocate for more of this, not for money, but for security.
How do you feel about voluntary socialism, like communes and co-ops? Hey, if it works, it works. Yeah,
it's voluntary.
anything. Yeah, anything voluntary. I mean, nobody's saying that socialism can't be utilized to a articulate standard. It's just, when has it actually worked in real time? When has really anything worked in real time besides on a lower on a individual localized level where nobody's really going to know about it, right? So, but I'll let you guys answer the question.
I think you should have the choice to live your life any way you want, but you shouldn't be able to force me to live in socialism if I don't want to. So
Yeah.
I think voluntary socialism is fine, and we should allow people to live their life the way they want to live, and if they want to live in a commune and bring all their resources together for the common good, that's fine, but we shouldn't force it on anyone. And we're forcing it on people at the federal level now. So that's my major concern. And we've seen in the last however many years, very recent history, that the government can force anything on you, and if it's not working fast enough for them, they can do something like the shutdowns during COVID and run people out of business that way and make them more dependent that way. And so if we're not fighting back against this, they're going to continue to force it on us, and they're going to use any mechanism they can that's at their disposal to take every last bit of our economic and personal freedom away.
I figured out what I was going to say earlier. Both sides, two sides of the same coin. The Democrats or the Republicans, they use specific issues to get at the other side to build a bigger picture. Like immigration is used on the forefront every year, every election. Should we impose more regulations? Should we lift regulations? Should we put more money into this or pull less money out of that? It's a game that they play just to constrict you. They're almost like an anaconda around your throat or your whole body at that point, since it's an anaconda. But Andrew, for that question or anything, whatever.
There's an exception to every rule, right? If you look at like Singapore and Taiwan, they're effectively reformed society for the it's not perfect, but like I said before, there's a framework to different types of governments and how they operate. If you can if you can work out the kinks of more effective, productive governments, you have a better chance of giving people the potential for a push in a successful direction. But it has to be voluntary. It can't be all encompassing. It can't be perfect. It has to be diligent, and it has to be slow to develop, and the people have to be on the same page and not forced to be on the same page. They had to come to it voluntarily.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I think the other part of that is, when you're forcing socialism on people like our government currently is doing, then people start to look for drastic ways to fight against that. And if they're believing the narrative that's coming from DC, they start to believe that things like mass deportations, freezing all immigration, tariffs, these drastic measures that are going to have major effects on our economy are good things, then the government then seizes more control away from us through the guise of, answering what the public wants. And so we're moving further away from the solutions that you're talking about, Andrew, and we're actually giving up more of our economic freedom and personal freedom.
And they're appealing to fear, which is the most destructive form of government that you can have, because that's what builds towards the police state, the fear and the prestige that people want so much for. Oh, that's my society. That's where I live. There's a shelf life. People have to step down. There has to be a reorganization of the consensus of what the identity is for the people that you're around, and understand that co-equal actors have to realize that there's a time and space for everything, and sometimes you have to go off and separate and develop your own identity, your own niche, and your own society. You can't dilute the society by bringing in more people and say, oh, we'll fix the problem later. The problem is less control, not more.
Well, I'm not even sure if it's fear. It's that people are desperate, right? People are having a hard time keeping up with their bills, putting groceries on their table. And so they're looking for drastic ways to affect that. And so if they think that immigrants are stealing jobs and that their pay will be higher if we get rid of the immigrants, then they'll be, very loudly asking us to limit or eliminate immigration altogether. And so they're looking for quick fixes from the government, where the government in my lifetime has never made anything better. They've only made things worse. And so people buying these narratives, instead of pushing back and saying, you caused these problems, we have no faith in you to fix them, we want to do it our way, which is free markets and personal responsibility.
Well, I mean, government, they're the one that run the immigration system. Immigration should be sponsored, and there should be a cost associated with that sponsorship. If something was to happen after you immigrated, not only the person that sponsored you should pay a cost for that, but also you as the person that caused the problem, from my perspective.
The druid has arrived. Welcome, Nick. So let's let Nick give his piece here and introduce himself. So what we've gone through a slew of topics. So I'm just gonna keep it basic. How do we fix government and society and get it down to the smallest level, Nick?
Well, so on the way back from the baby shower, we got pulled over because the headlight's out. Honestly, I just forgot to put the headlight in. We actually had the new headlight in the wife's Suburban. I had it right there in the glove compartment. For some reason, my wife was driving and I was sitting in the passenger seat. And he asked for both of our IDs. He goes back and runs both of our names. I've actually had a warrant for driving without a license in Colorado when I was at the halfway house for about 6 months. That was about 6 months before I got completely discharged from my prison sentence. So the halfway house was so miserable and bureaucratic that as soon as you are there, they make you turn your driver's license into a state ID. So you have to surrender your driver's license, and they make you take public transportation to go to work and all that. So I said, screw that, I'm just going to drive anyway because I got to work for a living to pay my bills at the halfway house. So I ended up getting arrested and finished the last little bit of my time in prison until I discharged my sentence. Pretty much shortly after that, I moved down to Texas. Cop goes back and he's like, well, you got a warrant out of Colorado. What's all that about? I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's non-extraditable. You can't put me in cuffs. And he went sideways on me. So I think the problem with everything is there's no way to fix government but to slowly get rid of it. And if there's anything we can do to get rid of government, get rid of it. If even the most minute detail of government's authority, down to people selling stuff on the side of the road or in a parking lot, and the cops harass them. I was actually talking to a feller earlier today and yesterday about that, just in one of the posts. If they try to sell produce on the side of the road or watermelons on the side of the road, the cops will come up and give them a ticket. So if that's something that the local citizens want to do, give that power back to the people and get rid of it with the government. I absolutely hate the government in every single form or fashion. I think we need to start with something that's realistic as far as power we can take back from the government, and then just keep building on that and keep building on that.
This is an interesting question to go off of that point, though. Do y'all ever wonder if Scourge Earth is the only way to save us? Just burn it all.
Don't block my driveway, baby.
Or in the words of Buds in Reality, burn it all. But I don't know. I don't know how you actually would have to fix government. I mean, the only way that you really could do it is just completely divorce from everything and just nullify what's going on in DC or even your state capital and get together with your community and effectively create your township or your town or your little village or your neighborhood even into your own little enclave, your own little commune rather. So what do you guys think?
I don't think we can get rid of government in America because it's so entrenched in everything until there's a war on American soil. So yeah, I'm kind of with the scorched earth policy. I think even if we had libertarians in a good bit of positions, I don't think it would be enough to fix anything. I really think that the government is so involved in legislature and lobbying. I don't think there's a way to get rid of it. I think the only way to get rid of it is to actually get rid of it with some sort of war on American soil.
Hopefully that's not the case. Free, Andrew, any thoughts?
Well, I mean, it costs a lot of money to launch a war like that and maintain, trying to maintain the status quo. It costs a lot of lives. That's probably the worst case scenario, and I really doubt a large amount of the population is willing to put up with that, considering what we've done over the last 20 years in the Middle East. So, I mean, you saw how everybody reacted when Donald Trump went and attacked Iran for just a short period of time. I mean, it's very expensive and very personal to a lot of people. So I really doubt that that's going to be an effective way for us to, stick the landing and successfully come out on the top, considering they have nuclear weapons. They're the people playing the main character in the video game. We're just background characters. They could care less about us. They know that we'll pay the taxes no matter who survives and who doesn't, because they've got the guns.
I think that the only chance we have is through nullification. And there are, thankfully, some examples of civic nullification working. And one example of that is, over 200 different localities have declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuary areas. And so that's a huge number for that type of pushback. Another one is all of the counties that push back and the states that push back against the federal COVID mandates. And that's what broke the lockdown, was states and local communities pushing back against the lockdowns. And so there are examples of it working. It just needs to be more widespread and on everything, not just specific things like the Second Amendment and COVID.
Jag, not enlisted tribunals. I think we should just go to tribunals. Nuremberg trial 2.0.
Well, I kind of agree with what Free's saying, but the reason I don't see it working is kind of the uniparty existing. So as soon as you have the Democrats and Republicans, it doesn't matter if one of them has a good idea, the other side's automatically going to be against it. So right now, fairly speaking, that's a 50-50 division immediately, regardless of how good the idea is, just because of political party association. Even Biden did do a few decent things, like Newsom has done a few decent things, but no matter what, the right is automatically going to hate it because it's Newsom doing it, or they're going to refuse to acknowledge it. So I think the only way to actually have what Free is talking about applicable is if there's no political parties at all, may the best man win on their principles in their campaign alone. But as soon as there's a political party at all, we're really not going to fix anything.
I mean, you brought up Newsom, and Newsom and Karen Bass are actually trying to use nullification to push back against Trump now. And so the one advantage we have with politicians is they all want power, whether it's at any level, throughout the system. And so the key is to get the local people and the state people who want that power to fight for that power against the federal government. And if, for example, if we weren't paying individual income taxes, if the state had to pay the federal government for each state's portion of the federal resources that state uses, our taxes would go down immediately, because they wouldn't want to give up that money. They'd want to keep that money local. They'd want to keep that power local. And so it's trying to figure out ways of tricking the state politicians to fight against the federal politicians.
Well, I mean, power serves power, right? And it depends on the gut of the person that you're talking to. This goes back to the psychology I talked about before. 2/3 of the psychological power, momentum, and control is either securing control or avoiding conflict and trying to keep the peace. The last third is about reforming. So you're really, it's a numbers game, and it's really kind of difficult for you to reach that with the general population. So you had to keep that in mind when you're negotiating. Not only that, there's layers to these things. So we got state, local, city, federal. People know each other. People know other people who know each other, and they're gonna try to stick out for the people that they know and try to help them and maintain some prestige and some status in the overall picture. And it's really hard for you because the water is diluted. It's muddy. You don't have a clear picture of who to talk to, who's compromised, and it's very appealing just to go scorched earth because you think it's gonna. But that's just a struggle session. That everything that from that point back in the past, that doesn't matter now because we got a clean slate and we can screw everybody over for another 50, 100 years, and then we'll do it all over again. And that's not going to fix the problem. It's only going to delay it. And that's all we ever do is delay the problem because no one wants to be accountable. Because, like I said, it's a number game. Nobody is interested because it's not it's not psychologically, they're not psychologically geared to be interested. They're more interested in peace or control than reform.
Why is it, speaking of psychologically, why is it that human beings are willing to outsource their own individual authority to others?
They're
Why
looking for somebody
why do
to
we
blame, from my
yeah,
perspective.
why do we allow ourselves to be ruled and robbed? Let's just put it that way.
It's sold as a good idea.
Mm.
Even having a government to begin with is basically socialism, right? You're
Hmm.
that's basically the general idea of it. And when you look at the biggest problem right now in America, um, just the unfunded liability for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid is, I think it actually just hit $200 trillion, if I'm not mistaken. Unfunded liability. And the main aspect of that is the people that were paying it that are currently retired, they were making significantly less wage. So then inflation happens. So whatever they paid in their whole life, say it's $50,000 into these programs, you know, the money the money that they paid in isn't worth what they're getting now, along with the devaluation of our currency. And it's just, nobody will ever attack that. You know, I don't think anybody, it would be political suicide to run on the idea of phasing out all, just for starters, federal socialist programs, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Phase them out. $175 trillion minimum unfunded liability. And they think our national debt's the problem. Nobody will run that campaign and just be honest.
You missed pensions in there too.
Oh,
All of it, yeah. But $175 trillion, and somehow people think that, you know, this is just going to go away. It's a compounding problem. Every single time our national debt goes up $1 trillion, that devalues our currency. You know, we're what, a 2.1, $2.2 trillion deficit yearly right now, that we just wash just in interest. You know, it's horrible. But nobody's going to campaign on getting rid of socialism, because they would just be destroyed, and nobody running would actually admit the errors of socialism. And government will never admit its errors. You guys probably heard about that sovereign wealth fund, and you know, each new baby is going to get $1,000 in the stock market.
Yeah.
That's just another. That's socialism. They're like, well, the government's gonna give it. It's more free shit, and people still buy the free shit. There's MAGA people everywhere. Oh, this is great. You know, it actually gets a good foothold for the kid. It's socialism, and you just bit into it, hook, line, and sinker again.
I think a lot of it is it's generationally cultural to be fearful of the possibility of another Great Depression. So psychologically, we as a country, we're still looking back into the past at that, and nobody wants that to happen, and they want to make sure that they're taken care of. So I think that has a little bit to do with it. So
yeah. Well, Social Security right now is actually causing social insecurity. So, but you know, if I was like, would anybody actually run on the campaign of phasing out or having just the option to opt your kids out of Social Security and just not have your kid have a Social Security number? Do you think anybody running for president would ever introduce that as an idea? Or is it just complete suicide and you're not going to get any votes?
Not only will they not introduce that idea, but they won't even talk about making Social Security whole. So, like, we have no problems spending all this money on war, for example, but taking money, even borrowing money, and establishing private retirement accounts where we just say, you know what, we embezzled all that money from Social Security. We're going to like pay that actually back, and we're going to put that in a retirement account for you, a private retirement account. And, you know, if you opt into it, you can have a private retirement account with every dollar you put into it at this point. You know, they won't even run on that fact.
Well, I don't even think they would run on the platform of just paying everybody back exactly what they've paid in.
That's literally
like right
what
now,
I just said, Dick.
Yeah. Sorry, my bad. But, no, so I've been working since I was right about 14 and a half building trails. I don't know, honestly, what I've paid into these programs, but if I could opt out of it right now and not be dependent on the government, I would take that payout option. And I bet a lot of Americans would.
A lot of people that are retiring now, if it was invested at like 5%, they'd be receiving, hundreds of thousands of dollars per year in interest off of what they paid into Social Security and what their employer paid. And, they're getting, $30,000 a year in Social Security payments. I mean, it's an absolute joke.
Yeah, well, even Edward Jones, like my IRA and the kids' accounts that we have for him, they generally make, on the crappiest year I've had since I started it 6 years ago, the crappiest year I had was 11.5% that he made me in 1 year. That was the crappiest year. The highest I had was just over 13%. So when you compare that to making 13% and the government devaluing the currency 3% and then somehow making money on holding your Social Security, it's just a joke. And I don't see how people buy it. We need the option of being able to opt out of them. Like I have a daughter that due September 2nd, right? I was just at a baby shower. I want the option to have her not have a Social Security number and not be involved in that program. And I think that's just fair because that's my kid, not the government's kid.
Hayek was talking about this in some of his research. He's called the precedent. Precedent of knowledge, and we think we know everything, and we're going to make a gambled assumption, and we're going to lay out the framework for something, and we're going to be able to make sure that we're going to apply to this and that, and make sure that nothing ever goes wrong. But we do it without a time limit, so it's just inevitable. Look like the Constitution. We make a decision and it sticks to the end of time. But it just, without a market to push back and say this is wrong, you're not going to be able to be accurate about this forever. A market corrects for these things.
You would think, but something's holding it back. So Speaking of markets, let's talk about housing. How do we fix the housing market in today's world? And what are different alternatives we could possibly use to fix everything pretty much?
Get the government out of it, just like everything else. I have 5 acres. There's 3 acres next to me. The amount of money I paid off on my house, I could actually buy that 3 acres that's for sale next to me. It has a crap double wide that's nobody's lived in for 15 years. Knock that out of the way, put a couple mobile homes on it, and rent it for market price. But I can't do that because the government's going to get involved. There's going to be paperwork. There's going to be taxes. And why can't we do that? The housing problem is government problem. Even when I think it really started when all the slaves went up north after the slaves got freed, and it started with the projects paid for by the government to stick all the black people in an area, and they're like, hey, we can make this work. We can apply this everywhere. The beehive mentality is also the beehive apartment. Everybody wants these 15-minute cities, to where you can't have a garden. You don't have any outside. You don't even know how to grow things. There's no creeks. There's no prairies. There's no fields. And even Elon Musk, like he's such a futuristic person. They want flying cars and all this fancy technology. But basically, in my opinion, everything progressive like that, and it's actually regressive. It takes away from humanity. Everybody's going to be on their screen. So say everything's developed. Where are we going to grow our food? Synthetic food. We're going to print, instead of synthetic meat, we're going to print everything we eat and just not even know what a free world looks like, to where you can walk through a forest and go fishing. Like I think we need to save that. And the government right now, they're always talking about infrastructure. I don't want any more damn infrastructure. We have enough. I like looking at wilderness. I like looking at trees. I like looking at horses and cows in a pasture. And maybe that's just me, but I don't want flying cars. I don't want any of that shit. I want to go back another 50 years and never invent anything else.
Not everyone wants to print a pizza, but it is possible.
It is.
Look it up on
Well,
YouTube.
I will say, like, how do we bring back all this locally and allow localities to build ownership for individuals, bring back that aspect of community into the housing market?
Well, specifically what you're talking about there, one is pushing for local control over zoning and planning and not allowing, federal mandates pushed on local communities for that. And then the localism solution would be starting local land trusts and property collectives to keep centralized control out of, community autonomy. And, they use these federal mandates and money and HUD to push these federal mandates down on the local communities, and then the localities lose control over their own land.
Well, so the two things that I would like to see happen first is no more property tax and completely abolish anything associated with eminent domain and start there and see how that works.
Yes. Mr. Crypto.
Well,
where do
I
you
mean,
see-
housing is a utility, right? And it really just depends on the territory that you're talking about using the utility. Some territories are more open-minded than others. Texas, for example, is a lot more open-minded about how and that you can see that reflected in the housing market in Texas compared to, say, California, where it's more regulated by code. And I've seen this when I was in Tennessee. I was working at a medical college, and they I mean, it's not related to housing, but it's still infrastructure, building, and stuff like that. They were reforming zoning. Yes, they were reforming a building for the medical college. It was being rented out before this. They reformed it permanently, and they failed this. They failed the school because the way that they had the computers mounted on the walls were off by a quarter of an inch. So they had to go and waste everybody's time because of the way. And this is what I'm talking about: prestige, perfection. It doesn't have to be perfect as long as it works. They don't care about efficiency; they care about perfection and looking good and performing. And it's really just up to how you configure the local government, the state government, the city government, however you want to do it. So
Mike Rowe has a saying, actually. It's the safety third, not safety first. Perhaps safety needs to be in the back of your mind, and then you will actually focus on safety rather than it be forward right there and right there in front of your face where you really don't care because you think you're safe.
you need to order your priorities.
Yeah.
Well, I also think that we also need real titles too. So if you actually have a title to where the government can't take your property, there's no eminent domains where they can't force you off your property, change the zoning, any of that crap. And that's really the real thing. So something the Trump administration has done that I do like, and you guys have probably heard about it, is using rent history as a qualification to buy a home. I do like that because that gets people out of being subservient to a landlord or having an apartment, but they're still subservient to paying taxes. But that is a step in the right direction, is to get out of wasting your money every single month to rent. Granted, we still do rent in the form of property tax, but it's a step in the right direction. But we need absolute titles to where once your house is paid off, nobody can take it from you for any damn reason. And then get rid of.
To the point of safety, a lot of these things are the theater of whatever we're talking about. So when we're talking about the theater of safety, it's the guise of doing these controlling things in the name of safety, but they're not actually making us safer. And, we were talking about food earlier, and, the FDA has actually made food less safe because they're bringing all of the meat to, these large corporate meat processing facilities, commingling it. And so if there's a bacterial outbreak at these food packing facilities or food processing facilities, then all of the meat gets it. And so it's hurting our food security through the guise of providing safety. And so when we're talking about safety with housing, we're talking about the same thing. They're making us jump through all these hoops, spend money, throw away good work under the guise of safety, but it's not actually making us any more safe. And in the private market, we have solutions for that. If you want insurance, they're going to make sure that they're insuring something that's not going to fall down tomorrow. So we don't even need the government in safety at all.
Well, so you probably heard about this too. So I think it was in the 1960s when the USDA started inspecting beef to make people feel confident in these massive facilities. So what they would do is they would actually play these commercials, and they would say that we have these trained experts to make sure that the meat is safe. And guess what their test was? They would poke a needle into the meat and then smell it. And as it was going down the assembly line, they would use the same needle and poke every single thing and then smell it. You can look it up. And if there was one cow that was infected, they were actually poking every other cow. This is very well documented. And that actually was the standard practice of the USDA for inspecting cows up until the early 90s, believe it or not, before they went to individual swabs.
It's like Free said, it's marketing, right? It's the same thing that happened in the Soviet Union. They would have somebody sit to smell the eggs to make sure that realistically most of them were safe. And this is just their solution to a very, very difficult problem that it's an optimal, and it's not optimal to best effectively serve the market. It's just, okay, they feel good, we don't have to worry about it, let's move on to something else. We got a lot of things to do. And the big problem, there's the same problem with the police is that they're marketing the feeling of safety. You're not actually safe because there's always going to be a risk.
Oh yeah, just also, like when my wife got pulled. Yeah, so when my wife got pulled over on the way home from the baby shower for no headlight, you should have seen the look on this cop's face and how his whole demeanor changed when I just looked him right in the eye and I said, "That's not extraditable, and you can't arrest me." He got bent out of shape about that, really pissed off. He's like, "You need to get this taken care of. You have a wife and kids." I'm like,
"It's none of his business."
Me? Yeah, like you can't arrest me for it. You can't do nothing about it. I mean, you could actually see like a vein getting bulged on his forehead, and like, dude, I'm sorry that I know the truth. What are you gonna do about it?
Speaking of the police, actually, how do we fix that to where we no longer have that demeanor occurring with the police? How do we decentralize police and dismantle the large bureaucracy and the unions and redistribute authority back to the local level?
A side note on that, I think one of the interesting things that's going on is, with this Big Brother surveillance state that we've installed, one of the outcomes of that has been the cases of police using that surveillance to stalk women, their wives, girlfriends, exes, strangers. And, these cases are popping up that they're using the surveillance for that. So, again, under the guise of safety, we're now giving tools to people that are using it for committing crimes.
There's a lot of sick people out there.
Are you talking about scientific? I agree.
Yeah, the scientific thinks that this is the weirdest Rogaine commercial he's ever seen.
I don't know what's more sicker, the police using surveillance equipment to stalk women and their wives and girlfriends, or just strangers, or scientific thinking this is a Rogaine commercial.
What
Grow
scientists
hair,
meant to
Andrew.
say, there's a lot of testosterone on the screen right now, is really what he meant to say.
Especially the baldness.
Yeah, so I
That's
think
quality.
and Free talks about this all the time. And I've actually been through the prison game before. So before I actually went to prison, I was sentenced to a halfway house in Colorado by a judge that was a partial owner of that halfway house.
Mm.
It was a private halfway house, and she was a partial owner of it.
There's no
You know?
consistency in the law.
It's
A lot of conflict of interest.
yeah. But the prison industrial complex is really the problem. You know, so say you commit a crime and you're on parole or probation, right? You can't drink, you can't smoke weed, and say your crime was getting in a fist fight at a bar. Why would they put you on probation for that? You know, why not just have the people figure the problem out? And I think that everybody wants some sort of mediator, and they think that the government and the cops and the judge and the sheriff, they think that they're actually the righteous mediator for their cause. But say you break into somebody's store and steal their shit, or you shoplift. How does the business recuperate that money, right? So say you get a fine for shoplifting, say whatever, call it $150 ticket. Why doesn't that go to the business owner? Why does that go to the government?
Well, I mean, it's because it's the framework that we've been brought up under, and our parents have been brought up under, and our grandparents and great grandparents. And I mean, Lysander Spooner talked about this, right? In his writings and everything about how he's known people who were police officers that were just happy to arrest people just because they were drunk in public. Meanwhile, if you go to Japan, for example, you can be as drunk as you want in public and you're not going to go to jail. It's a cultural issue. It's not a legal issue. It's based off of how things are marketed. What people are used to, they're not going to want to argue if they think it's going to get them in trouble. They reduce risk unless they have to.
Plus, it's a revenue source, right? So they do all of these things because they make revenue off of them. And coincidentally, the people that write the laws are usually lawyers that make money off of, you know, any sort of civil or criminal case. And, you know, so it's a revenue source. And then that's not even throwing civil asset forfeiture into the mix, where they can take your stuff away from you just for being charged with a crime, not even being convicted of that crime.
Yeah. And Michael Malice made that point. Sorry. You can go ahead and talk, Nick, if you'd like.
No, I just want to say something real quick. So even under our Constitution, it is very clear, without a shadow of a doubt, that you can't go to prison because of your inability to pay something. Yeah. In our current society, that's almost a standard. So say if you go to a county jail, there's a lot of homeless people, bums or whatever, that are in there doing jail time to pay their fine.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I've been to county jail. There's actually a lot of people. So even in Jefferson County in Colorado, I would say on average in that jail at any given time, 10% of the population is in there doing jail time to pay their fine.
Well, like I was starting to say before, Michael Malice made the point. The Constitution is centralization of the Articles of Confederation, right there, and this goes back to what I was talking about before, is that they had this in place. They had an idea of how they would operate, but they made compromises to deal with the situation in order to keep the scam going. And they don't play by the same rules. They just play by the spirit of the spirit of what the law is supposed to be, and that's very dangerous for a long-term approach for people to live in a society in general, from my perspective.
What were we talking about? I lost everything. I had a splinter in the connection, so sorry about that.
You had to splurt? That's gross.
I had to splurt.
Well, this is a Rogaine commercial, so there you go.
Yeah, we were talking about how smoking is going to make your hair fall out. Was what we were talking about.
Yeah. See, that's what
Oh,
happened to
well.
me. Don't smoke, kids.
That's-
It's dangerous. No,
My
but
ceiling fan and my couch are being made fun of too in the comments. I see that. So thanks, Scientific.
don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds.
No, I told Free I wasn't gonna have a drink, man. But first beer, I'm not gonna be on for too much longer. I got a whole bunch of shit to unpack from the baby shower, but definitely cops piss. The amount of laws that are on the books that we need to figure out how to get off of the books. Like even being able to a cop to give you a ticket for not having a headlight. We need to get rid of their authority to do that. You know,
not even just the
somehow,
laws,
somewhere.
but the regulations that are being written. I mentioned this earlier, but the regulations that are being written by unelected bureaucrats, you know, thousands each and every year. And then, you know, the cost that goes along to compliance with those regulations written by unelected bureaucrats.
Which would also include the big, beautiful bill. I guarantee you there were people not in Congress that wrote legislation in there.
Oh, yeah.
That's a function of how our current government operates. You see this in like Israel and USSR, obviously not the USSR in Iran anymore, but Russia. You see it in the United Kingdom, China. This is like adding, subtracting, multiplying. This is how these programs run. In psychology, it's like a math program. Certain governments operate under certain rules because it's not only appealing to the general population, but it's been so enshrined in the way things have been done for so long that you don't have any other option until there's a point of no return where they're going to say, well, this isn't working, we need to change the rules. And you saw that with, you know, the American Revolution. Was they're violating us objectively. They don't care. We need to do something, and we need to do something about this now. And I'm not calling for a revolution. I'm just saying that's objectively what happened in that point in time.
Why aren't you calling for a revolution?
And Scientific, that's not a shed, man. That's my log cabin house, dude.
I always like to say that Nick is live from Guantanamo.
All I heard was we need to build cabins in Guantanamo and send politicians and bureaucrats.
I could get behind that.
No, we got the Trinity River right down here, about 15 miles from my house. That's a real deep, dirty, shitty river, and you know, right up the street from there, there's a place where you can rent wood chippers.
Actually, speaking of wood chippers, final question of the night, because we're running it. We've gone almost 2 hours, guys. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. This has been a blast. So, but the Epstein list. Let's finish out on the Epstein list. Why? What?
Why is Nick on it?
Yeah. Why is Nick on it? What
is that? Oh,
Nick,
I thought that was going to be your question.
Nick's on it. What? But what? Why does this keep on coming up? Why are we not ever going to get closure? It seems. What's with all the secrecy? What's with all the deflection and the secrecy?
Well, as soon as Epstein releases the client list, our whole government would collapse.
I mean, hey, I'm for that.
So
I mean, I'm fine with that.
But when you really look at who's pulling the strings in America, it's Netanyahu. And I guarantee you Netanyahu has the real Epstein list and the real dirt on it. And Trump's post earlier today about it just being fabricated by the government. Does he actually think we're that stupid? There is somebody in prison right now, Ghislaine Maxwell, that the judge ordered sealing of her black book of clients. And somehow he thinks that we're stupid enough to buy the shit he's selling. No.
And there's people from both sides of the duopoly that are on it as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you need a third to pass the measure of release it and our government collapses, I'll be the third. So
A general
See,
consensus.
I don't think our government would collapse, though. I just think we would just have to hold emergency elections in Congress, and companies would have to hold emergency board elections to replace their CEOs. You know, all the states would just have to figure out emergency elections. Companies, world leaders, presidents, they would just all have to hold emergency elections to find replacements. That's all that would happen. Nothing would actually collapse.
Be a great time for states to take back power from the federal government.
Yes, I agree on that one. I think it would be a lot easier. Maybe a lot easier. Maybe it'll be difficult, but be a lot easier to finally nullify and splinter and divorce and successfully divorce, unlike the last time.
Well, I mean, to a degree, we all are kind of divorced because we're not citizens in the District of Columbia, as the ruling goes. I can't remember the exact ruling, but I know I've got it written down somewhere. So you could just, in theory, walk away, but it's not really how it goes. It's just a legal positivism.
No, to be honest, that 14th Amendment actually makes it harder for the Constitution to apply to you. Because the Constitution doesn't actually apply to citizens.
Well, I think something kind of dark and devious happened when they moved our nation's capital to D.C. instead of where it's supposed to be in Pennsylvania. I bet if you were to ask 100 high school graduates, where was the capital supposed to be when our country was founded? I bet 90 of them would say Washington, D.C., and then not Pennsylvania.
There's no futon here, scientific. I wish. I like futons.
Scientific's looking for a place to spend the night. He's not choosy. It doesn't have to fold out.
I'll give you a chair.
Hey, I mean, it's a good chair. Captain's quarters.
So, what are your thoughts, Zach? What do you think about the Epstein list, man? Does Netanyahu have the whole thing? You know, or
I don't know if Netanyahu. I don't know if he has anything to do with it. I think he's just like our politicians, really. He's just a face in the crowd of a bunch of crooked political pundits. But I do think that the pieces are molded together towards all the entire intelligence community, from Mossad to the CIA to people in power and boardrooms for corporations. You have bureaucrats and politicians. I think it goes all the way up to the top banks. I mean, if I would have to go put my conspiracy hat on, I think it actually goes more up to the Rothschild family. But that's a topic that we could go on for hours on, and I don't really want to do that. So, but
Zach has got 45-minute promos on that before.
But as far as Israel and Bibi has to say about it, it does certainly show that Israel has a lot of power over the United States, with just where they're at in the world, and they need the United States. Otherwise, they don't exist. And that is the truth. If they don't have the backing of some superpower, Israel would not exist, because you have a surrounding territory of countries that do want to wipe Israel off the face of the planet. So,
well, no, they actually agreed to recognize Israel until Israel, changed the terms of whatever that agreement was. So, I mean, you continue to mess with people and move the goalpost, you're going to have continued friction in the region.
Well, I'm just going. I understand the political, but I'm also going off of the historical when it comes to Islam, and it's just Islam is historically a conquest cult, so they can't exist without expanding. So not to take anything negative away from Israel. Israel, I mean, needs to learn their place. Perhaps you can get along because you're exactly right, Free. I believe it was the Abrahamic Accords, wasn't it?
I believe so, but I'm not an expert
Yeah.
in that. So,
So I mean that's the political aspect, and then you have the historical aspect, and the whole region in itself is just it's a clusterfuck. It's a powder keg waiting to explode. It's always been a powder keg, and it's been waiting to go up in flames since the end of World War One. So,
And what's funny is Israel bombed Gaza again today, killed like 160
mm,
people, and you see
and of
MAGA
course,
accounts cheering it on, acting like they're doing the good
mm-hmm,
thing, and you're like, how can you guys be so brainwashed and stupid?
mm-hmm.
You know?
Marketing.
That's exactly
And
what it is. Marketing.
yeah, well, it's
Look how
and
clever we
somehow
are.
and somehow Trump ran on the whole thing. You know, his big thing was the no more funding for the war in Ukraine. They're speed rushing another $100 million over to Ukraine. MAGA's okay with it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I just don't
100
understand
billion,
how.
right?
No, 100 million, not 100 billion.
Oh, I thought it was a billion.
I don't think so. I'm pretty
Well,
sure it was 100 billion or 100 million. But either way, I don't care if it's one damn dollar. That's my money. You know, that's our
mm-hmm.
money that should be spent on us. I don't care if it's one damn cent. But somehow MAGA's okay with it. They're not flipping out right and left. The only thing that some of them are mad about is this Epstein list crap, and some of them are still saying, let's move on. Trump's right. I trust Trump. He's doing the right thing." Don't buy what the government is selling, man. There, there, there's no way the whole Epstein list is fake. That's just impossible, right? I mean, at least in my eyes. I understand psyops and everything. I don't think this is one of them. Well, it is a psyop, but it's not a fake psyop. It actually happened, you know.
Yes.
And
That's how they do is they'll mix it in there. It's called kayfabe in wrestling. Is that some things are real, some things are a lie, and you have to try to. You're always guessing which one is the real fight and which one isn't.
Works and shoots. Works and
what do you
shoots.
what do you think, Free? Do you think the whole Epstein thing is just faked by the CIA, never happened, like Trump posted today, or do you think it's actually it did happen for sure, even if it was set up originally by the CIA?
I mean, I think Zach mentioned it. I mean, you know, it's on the record in court, and when what's his name was confirmed, Congress asked him about why they let Epstein go the first time, and because
Mm-hmm.
the intelligence agencies had their hooks into him. So, you know, I think it's already on the record that it exists. So, or that
And
there's at least, you know, that he at least was an intelligence asset.
No, I don't remember the exact title of the episode, but Tom Woods actually had a guest on that was talking. They wrote a book, basically saying that they have these organizations that are like kind of outside of the government, but they work with the government, co-equal, like I said, co-equal actors, and they governments work in secrets, right? So they know who likes what, who does what, and they're going to get this whole thing with Epstein is they use it to get dirt, right? They go to these people because they know that they're willing to do that kind of stuff, and they'll want for a payday, and they'll use that, and they'll position the people in such ways to get leverage over them. So look at what they did. Look what you did. If you want to keep it quiet, you're going to work with us, and that's a compromise, right? They'll compromise you. They don't care. They just want power, control.
Well, that's, you know, why the CIA was founded and how the CIA has operated since they were founded.
Yeah.
Mm. Interesting tidbit is how the CIA came to be almost in the same similar fashion as the Federal Reserve. which is interesting. So with that, guys, let's close out. I don't care who wants to go first. Free, Nick. Why don't you take turns? Tell everybody where they can find you. I'm sure they already know, but and plug
Yeah.
away.
Best
Plug
place to
away.
find me is on X. I'm at freedom, the number 4 us, the number 4 all. So freedom for us for all. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm the host of Are You Smarter Than a Politician, which is a satirical game show that we do to teach, liberty and freedom issues through an entertainment and comedy format. That's on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern. And like I said, I'm very excited to say this week we have Aaron Day, Joel Valenzuela, and the great Zach Kaiser is returning for another appearance. And we're going to be talking about similar things we were talking about tonight with crypto and decentralized finance. And so I'm really excited about this show. And, so check us out if you can, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, so I'm Nick. I'm pretty much only on X. Actually had to re-download the StreamYard stuff because all the other podcast deals I'm on for the most part, unless I'm on X and I click on Zach or anybody's deal. I'm pretty much on X and Rumble. But I'm at Nick Stobe 1. My last name's spelled weird, STOEBE 1. I don't know. I hate the government. I don't think I honestly realized how much I hate the government until I came across Free, and I had thoughts. I just didn't really know how to interpret them. So if anybody here follow Free, he's definitely a good teacher. And as far as a good way to think independently rather than forcing stuff down your throat. It's a different way and a good dude to learn from.
Nah, I'm freedom for us for all. Terry and I just met yesterday, so she doesn't know my handle. So, fist bump though, Nick.
Virtual fist bump.
Yeah.
So
appreciate the compliment.
And everybody follow Terry.
Yeah, follow Terry. She's the brains of the operation.
So, anyways, Andrew, would you like to take us out?
Sure.
Should we do an Irish goodbye?
And thanks for having me, guys. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
This was very interesting and informative. You guys are extremely smart guys. You too, Nick. I really enjoyed talking to all of you, and really lucky that I have so many great friends in the liberty movement that challenge me and make me think and, keep me optimistic that we might figure out a way of solving this, whether it's through DeFi or nullification or one of the many ways we mentioned tonight.
Awesome. Like I said, thank you for coming on, Free. Same to you, Nick. Late though, just playing. I'm glad you both made it. So, and it was fun. So
I'm just bummed we didn't get to see him get pulled over live. That would have been pretty funny.
That would have been great.
So if next time I'm at a baby shower or anything like that, I'm late for a space and I do get pulled over, I'll just record the whole thing if you guys are into that. Should have actually done that when I was getting pulled over because it was in town and I had reception. Should I have actually recorded the whole interaction?
Well, you can record even if you don't have a network connection, but yeah.
Yeah. No, which wouldn't have been fun, just live play getting pulled over
live
and talking shit to a cop.
with your bad luck, you should record everything, even if you're not getting pulled over, bud.
Yeah, day in the life of Nick. So Andrew, take us on out of here, Bo.
All right. Well, check us out this week. We're going to be having our legacy news on Monday and Wednesday. Check us out at World Blockchain Roundtable on Thursday, 9 a.m. 11 a.m. And Friday we'll be here at 11 a.m. as well. So thanks for watching, guys, and you have a good night.
Why don't you give how about Saturday too? We're doing another Saturday morning one. Why don't you give that one?
Well, I mean, I figured I'd leave something for you, Zach.
Break it.
What? Sorry, I didn't hear what
They
you
want to
said.
know what time zone too.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and time zone. Yeah.
This
Break
is
it
only
out.
your,
Yeah.
this is only your first show. You'll get used to promoting yourself.
Right. We'll also be live next Saturday at 11 a.m.
10 a.m.
10 a.m. Sorry, Eastern.
Eastern.
So yeah.
All times Eastern.
With who,
Right.
Andrew?
Crap. I'm sorry. I'm going blank. That's why I was trying to ask you to cover us over.
Man, we should be having
I'm sorry.
Aaron Day on next Saturday. So
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have PTSD. Sometimes it messes with me. So
it's because of the baldness.
yes.
It's because of the baldness. I don't know. Follow these guys, everybody, if you haven't already. Thank you, Free. Thank you, Nick. Andrew, follow Andrew. Like, subscribe, and let's take us on out of here. Should we do an Irish goodbye today, Andrew?
Probably a good idea. Yeah.
Should we?
I mean, hey,
I'm Irish. I approve.
Let's do it.
sounds good.
We
Thanks,
got an
guys.
Irish goodbye. Have a good one, everybody.